Hi, enjoy listening. The city cemetery stretched across a quiet hill, looking more like a park than a place for the dead. Rows of old oak trees shaded neat paths, and bright flowers spilled from carefully tended graves. For Ethan Walker, this place was a refuge. He didn't believe in ghost stories or wandering souls. At 20, he had seen worse things than imaginary spirits. Hunger, cold nights, fists of strangers. He had learned to fear only what was real. Ethan had been homeless for 8 years. He no longer remembered when exactly his life slipped onto the street. Sometimes he thought he had been born this way. But one memory cut through the blur. His mother. Not the woman who had raised him until 12 and whose grave he now visited, but the woman he still thought of as his only family. She had died suddenly, and within weeks he was sleeping in doorways, begging, stealing food, running from police, bouncing in and out of foster care. He always ran away. Institutions made him feel suffocated. The street, as brutal as it was, gave him an illusion of choice. The cemetery gave him something different. A place of peace. A place where he could sit by the grave of his mother and pretend she was still near. Mr. Harris, the caretaker, had long since accepted Ethan's presence. A bent, grey-haired man, Harris sometimes let him sleep in his shack, fed him soup, or found small jobs, pulling weeds, carrying water, repainting fences. Ethan had grown fond of the old man, though he rarely admitted it. That morning, Harris had given him a small can of black paint and a brush left behind by a visitor. Ethan squatted by the grave he thought belonged to his mother, scraping weeds from the soil before repainting the iron fence. Focused on the work, he didn't hear footsteps until a woman's muffled sobs broke the silence. He turned. A stranger stood just behind him. She looked about 45, well-dressed with careful makeup, the kind of woman who never worried about rent. Her eyes glistened, and her breath caught in a quiet sob. Ethan straightened, puzzled. "What are you crying for here?" he asked, brushing dirt from his jeans. "Been grave?" The woman shook her head. "No, I've been here before. I come to pray to her soul." Her voice cracked. Ethan froze. "Her?" She nodded toward the grave. He frowned. "This is my mum's grave." The woman stared at him as if struck. "Your mother?" "Yes," he said quickly. "Antonina Walker. She died when I was 12. The woman's face drained of colour. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, without warning, she collapsed at his feet. "Hey!" Ethan dropped the brush, panic flashing through him. He wasn't used to helping strangers, especially not ones dressed like she had money. For a moment, he considered running, but instead sprinted toward Mr. Harris's shack. "Old man, come quick!" Harris shuffled out, following Ethan back to the grave. Together, they lifted the unconscious woman's head. Harris splashed water on her face until her eyelids fluttered. She looked past Harris and fixed her eyes on Ethan. A weak smile flickered. Then she whispered words that chilled him to the bone. "My God, I've finally found you. I've been searching so long, son." Ethan froze where he stood. He thought she had lost her mind. The woman's name was Linda Walker. At least that's how she introduced herself, once Harris helped her sit on the bench under the shade of a tree. She spoke slowly, still pale from fainting, but her eyes never left Ethan's face. "I was born in a small town," she began. "My parents struggled to feed 5 kids. I worked at 14 to help them. After high school, I left for the city. I thought it would be a chance at a new life." Ethan folded his arms. He wasn't sure why he was listening. Probably because she looked so sure of what she was saying. Linda told him about her first job as a maid in the mansion of a wealthy widow. The woman lived with her 2 grown sons. The older one worked hard in his father's company. The younger, Victor, was spoiled, arrogant, but charming. He was the kind of man who thought girls from poor towns should be grateful for his attention. I was young. I believed him. Linda said, her voice trembling. "We had an affair. When I found out he already had a fiancée from another rich family, it crushed me. And then I learned I was pregnant." She looked down at her hands, twisting the rings on her fingers. "When I told his mother, she said my child would never belong to their family, that I should forget about him. She threw me out. I left the house the same night." Ethan felt an unexpected sting in his chest. It was too detailed to be some lie she'd invented on the spot. Linda continued. She found a small room to rent and a job in a cafe kitchen. She made a friend there, another young woman from out of town, Tony Rivers. They became inseparable, more like sisters than co-workers. When Linda's son was born, Tony helped her through sleepless nights. Her voice cracked. When he was a month old, Tony disappeared, and she took my baby with her. Ethan's stomach tightened. I searched everywhere. I begged police to help. Nothing. She vanished. Years passed. I kept looking when I could. I never stopped. And now, she reached out and touched Ethan's arm gently. Now I'm looking at him. Ethan jerked away as if burned. "You're crazy! My mother's right here!" He pointed at the grave. Linda shook her head firmly. "No, Tony is here. She pretended to be your mother all these years, but I am your mother. I never stopped searching." The cemetery seemed suddenly too quiet. Ethan stared at her, his mouth dry. He wanted to laugh at her story, call it nonsense. Yet something about the way she said it, the rawness in her eyes, made it hard to dismiss. Mr. Harris stood nearby, frowning. He didn't interrupt. Ethan finally muttered, "That's insane." But his voice wasn't as steady as he wanted. Linda leaned forward, her eyes filling with tears. "I can prove it. And there's something else. Your father is still alive. He's dying. And he wants to see you." Ethan's head spun. This stranger was pulling his life apart, one word at a time. Ethan sat on the bench long after Linda finished speaking, staring at the gravel path under his shoes. His pulse thudded in his ears. A part of him wanted to stand up, walk away, and never see this woman again. But another part, quieter, heavier, kept him rooted to the spot. Something in her story had hooked deep inside. Linda wiped her cheeks with a tissue. "I know this is too much. You've lived your whole life believing Tony was your mother. I don't want to erase her. She raised you. But the truth is the truth." Mr. Harris cleared his throat. "Son, maybe you should let her finish. Doesn't sound like she's lying." Ethan shot him a glare. "Don't call me son." Then softer. "Not today." Linda folded her hands, steadying herself. "A month ago, I was contacted by Victor Bennett, your biological father." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "So now I've got a rich dad too? What's next? Secret inheritance?" Her eyes didn't waver. "Yes." The word stopped him cold. "He's dying of stomach cancer," she said. "Doctors gave him weeks, maybe days. He's in a hospice now. He confessed everything. He told me his mother, Margaret Bennett, arranged your abduction. She paid Tony to take you. But Tony kept you for herself instead of handing you over." Ethan's throat tightened. He rubbed his forehead, trying to push back the dizziness. Linda pressed on, voice quiet but urgent. "Victor regrets it, all of it. He admitted he was weak, that he let his mother control him. He asked me to find you before he dies. He wants to see you, to tell you himself." Ethan finally lifted his eyes to hers. "And why would I care? He let me grow up on the streets. He never looked for me." "He did look," Linda whispered, "but not enough. Not the way I did. He told me he was too ashamed, too scared of his mother. He failed both of us. But now he's alone. His mother was dead. His brother is dead. And he doesn't want to leave this world without facing you." The silence stretched. Ethan's chest ached with an unfamiliar heaviness. Mr. Harris rested a hand on his shoulder. "Kid, sometimes life throws things at you you're not ready for. But if this man's at the end, maybe hearing you out is worth it. Not for him, for you." Ethan's hands clenched into fists. He thought of the nights he'd slept under bridges, the fights in alleys, the hunger that never left. If this story was true, it all traced back to the decisions of people he had never met. "Where is he?" Ethan asked finally, his voice flat. Linda's lips trembled with relief. "The hospice on Willowbrook Avenue. We can go now." Ethan stared at the grave one last time. For 12 years, he had spoken to Tony as if she were his mother. Now he didn't even know who she had been. He stood slowly, his whole body tense. "Fine, but if this turns out to be another lie, you'll never see me again." Linda nodded. "Fair enough." And so they walked out of the cemetery together, mother and son, though only one of them believed it yet. The hospice was tucked behind an aging brick hospital on Willowbrook Avenue. The building looked quiet, almost too quiet, with rows of drawn curtains and the faint smell of disinfectant lingering in the air. Ethan hesitated outside the entrance, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. Linda touched his arm. "We don't have to do this today, but if we wait, it might be too late." Ethan's jaw tightened. He nodded once. "Let's go." Inside, a nurse with kind eyes greeted them at the front desk. When Linda gave Victor Bennett's name, the nurse's expression softened. "He's still with us," she said gently, "but he's weak. You'll need to keep your visit short." They walked down a narrow hallway lined with muted paintings. Ethan felt the weight of every step. His chest buzzed with nerves, though he kept his face hard. The door creaked open. Inside, a man lay propped against white pillows, a thin tube snaking from his nose. His skin was pale and hollowed, his frame shrunken, but his eyes grey and sharp lifted when they entered. "Victor," Linda whispered. "I brought him." The man's lips trembled into a smile. He lifted a trembling hand, pointing at Ethan. "You!" His voice cracked, little more than a rasp. "My son." Ethan froze. He had pictured this moment since Linda first told him the story. Imagined shouting, anger, maybe walking out. But the sight of the frail man before him stripped the anger down to something rawer. Victor coughed, wincing. "I was a coward. I let my mother take everything from us. I should have fought for you, for both of you." His gaze shifted to Linda, then back to Ethan. "I'm sorry." Ethan's throat burned. "Sorry doesn't give me back the years." Victor's eyes filled. "I know. And I don't ask forgiveness. Only a chance to see you before I go." For a long moment the room was silent, except for the hum of the oxygen machine. Ethan shifted closer, studying the man's face. He searched for something of himself, his jawline, his eyes, anything. Linda stood at the foot of the bed, her hands clasped, tears slipping silently. Finally, Ethan sat down on the chair beside the bed. He didn't speak, but he didn't leave either. Victor's lips curved faintly, relief flickering across his tired face. He reached out, his hand trembling in the air. After a long hesitation, Ethan gripped it. The skin was papery, fragile, but the hold was firm. Victor whispered, "Thank you for coming." Ethan lowered his gaze. He didn't know what he felt. Anger, sorrow, confusion. But for the first time in years, he felt something other than emptiness. Victor dozed for a few minutes, his chest rising in shallow breaths. Ethan sat stiffly in the chair, unsure whether to stay or leave. Linda didn't move, as if afraid even a sound might break the moment. Then Victor stirred, opening his eyes again. "I don't have long," he whispered. "But I need you to hear me." Ethan leaned back, arms crossed. "Go ahead." Victor's voice wavered, but grew steadier as he forced the words out. "My mother, Margaret, ran our family like a kingdom. She believed money and reputation meant everything. When Linda told her she was pregnant, she saw it as a threat, a scandal." He coughed, swallowing hard. "I didn't stop her. That's my greatest shame. She paid your caregiver, Tony Rivers, to steal you. She told me it was the only way to protect the family." Ethan's stomach clenched. Victor continued, "The plan was for my mother to raise you as her own. But Tony betrayed her. She disappeared with you. My mother tried to track her down, but nothing. She raged for years. And his voice faltered. "I did nothing. I let it happen." The silence cut deep. Ethan's nails dug into his arms. Linda's voice broke in, quiet but sharp. "You let me suffer alone. You let our child vanish." Victor shut his eyes, nodding weakly. "Yes, I was a coward. I hid behind my mother's power, afraid to face what I'd done. But I never forgot either of you." He opened his eyes again, glassy with tears. "I called you here because I want to make what little amends I can." Ethan's jaw clenched. "You think telling me this fixes anything?" "No," Victor whispered. "But there's more. Everything I own, all the businesses, the estate, the money, it will pass to you. There's no one else left. My brother Daniel is gone. My mother is gone. Ethan froze. I know what you've lived through, Victor said. I had a detective follow your trail once Linda found you. I know about the streets, the shelters. I can't erase that pain, but I can give you a future. Ethan pushed his chair back, standing abruptly. I don't want your money. Victor's lips trembled. Then don't take it for yourself. Use it for something better. But please, don't let it fall into strangers' hands. Ethan turned toward the window, his chest heaving. He hated the man before him for everything he'd allowed. But the truth was undeniable. His entire life had been shaped by choices Victor never fought against. And now, Victor wanted him to carry the weight of that legacy. Ethan, Linda said softly, stepping closer. This isn't about forgiving him. It's about you deciding what to do with what's left. A room pressed in around him. The machines hummed. Victor's laboured breaths filled the silence. For the first time in years, Ethan felt cornered, not by the streets, but by blood. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He lay on the cot in his small rented room above the auto shop, staring at the ceiling, hearing Victor's rasped words over and over. You're my only heir. I can't erase the pain, but I can give you a future. He turned onto his side, pressing his fist against his chest, as if he could crush the heaviness inside. The next morning, Linda was waiting outside when he stepped into the street. She had dark circles under her eyes, but she gave him a faint smile. Coffee? He almost said no, but something stopped him. Fine. They sat at a corner diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and the smell of fried eggs in the air. Linda stirred her coffee, but didn't drink it. She was watching him too closely. You don't have to look at me like that, Ethan muttered. I'm not about to break. Linda lowered her eyes. I just want to understand you, what your life has been. He let out a short laugh. You really want to hear it? The nights under the bridge, the fights for scraps, the time I got stabbed because some drunk thought I looked at him wrong. Or maybe the winters, when the cold eats through your bones so bad you think it'll kill you faster than hunger. Her hand trembled on the cup. I stole food. I picked pockets, with one eye open. That's how I survived. And while I was out there freezing, you say there was a father in a mansion with too much money to spend, doing nothing. His voice cracked sharper than he intended. Linda's eyes filled. I wasn't in a mansion. I worked 2 jobs. I searched every year. I put your picture on bulletin boards, begged police to reopen the case. I thought about you every single day. Ethan, I never stopped. He swallowed, staring at her. Part of him wanted to believe her. Another part clung to the anger. It was safer. Linda leaned forward. I know Tony raised you, but she stole you from me. She lied to you. I'm not asking you to call me Mum. I just want a chance to be in your life, however you'll allow it. Ethan's throat tightened. He looked away, out the window at the street. After a long pause, he muttered, If Victor dies, everything changes, doesn't it? Linda nodded. Yes. The estate, the company, all of it. Ethan rubbed his temples. I don't know if I want that. I don't know if I want any of this. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing his hand. Then decide on you. For the first time, Ethan didn't pull away. 2 days later, Linda's call came just after dawn. Her voice shook through the receiver. It's time. Victor isn't going to last the day. Ethan sat on the edge of his cot, the phone pressed hard to his ear. He stared at the wall, blank and peeling, while his stomach twisted. He didn't answer right away. Ethan, Linda whispered, please. He hung up without a word, pulled on his jacket, and walked fast through the empty streets toward Willowbrook Avenue. When he entered the hospice, the nurse gave him a quiet nod and pointed toward the room. Linda was already there, standing at Victor's bedside, holding his frail hand. Victor's skin looked grey, his breaths shallow and uneven. Ethan stood in the doorway, frozen. He had thought he'd come prepared, angry, hardened, ready to watch this man die without giving him peace. But when Victor opened his eyes and tried to smile, Ethan felt something crack. Son, Victor rasped. His voice was almost gone. Thank you for coming. Ethan stepped closer, his fists clenched at his sides. Don't call me that. You don't get to. Victor's lips curved faintly, a ghost of a smile. Fair enough, but you are my blood, and you'll be the one left to carry it. His hand trembled, reaching toward the nightstand. Linda picked up a folder and handed it to Ethan. Inside were legal documents, neatly bound. Victor coughed, each breath a struggle. The company, the house, the accounts, all yours. It's already signed. Don't waste it, Ethan. Don't live angry like me. Do better. Ethan stared at the papers. The weight of them felt heavier than any fight he had endured on the streets. Victor's gaze softened. I wish I had been braver. I wish I had fought for you. But I see you now, and you're stronger than I ever was. His eyes closed, then flickered open one last time. I'm proud of you. The words hit harder than Ethan expected. His throat closed, his chest tight. He wanted to shout, to say those words didn't mean anything after all the years lost, but he couldn't. Victor's hand slipped from Linda's grasp. His chest stilled. The monitor went flat. Linda covered her mouth, tears spilling. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the man who had given him life and stolen so much from it. And now the choice lay in his hands. The funeral was small. A closed casket, a brief service, a few business associates in dark suits. No family, no friends, just Ethan and Linda standing side by side under a grey sky. Ethan didn't speak during the service. He kept his eyes on the coffin, his jaw set. When it was over, Linda touched his sleeve. He's gone. But what he left behind, that's real. You have to decide what to do with it. 2 days later, Ethan found himself in a sleek downtown office, sitting across from Victor's attorney. The man slid a stack of documents across the polished desk. As executor of the estate, I'm here to confirm Mr. Bennett's final wishes. All assets transfer to you, Ethan. That includes the family home, valued at $8 million, the Bennett Holdings Company, and several investment accounts totaling. He named a number so large, Ethan almost laughed. The lawyer looked at him over thin glasses. It is a considerable responsibility. If you choose, you may sell the company, or you may take over as principal shareholder. Either way, the decisions are now yours. Ethan closed the folder without reading it. I don't know anything about companies. We can appoint advisors, the lawyer said smoothly. You'll have support. Ethan left the office with the weight of the folder under his arm. He walked through the city streets where he had once begged for change, the contrast so sharp it made him dizzy. That evening, Linda cooked dinner in her small apartment. She had insisted he come. The smell of baked chicken filled the room. She set 2 plates on the table. You don't have to decide today, she said gently. But you do have to decide. If you ignore it, others will step in. Lawyers, bankers, they'll tear it apart. Ethan stabbed at his food, not tasting it. I never asked for this. All I ever wanted was a roof that didn't leak and food that didn't run out. Now I've got mansions and companies shoved down my throat. Linda reached across the table, her eyes steady. That's why it has to be your choice. You know what it's like to have nothing. That gives you the chance to use this for something good. For yourself. For others. You don't have to be like them. Ethan looked at her, the ache in his chest growing sharper. For the first time, he allowed himself to wonder. Maybe this wasn't just a burden. Maybe it was a weapon he could turn into something better than the Bennetts ever imagined. Weeks passed. Papers were signed, meetings arranged, advisors introduced. Ethan sat through them all, silent, listening, learning. The Bennett estate was vast, but hollow, money without warmth, power without people. One evening, he returned to the old shelter where he had once slept on the floor. The same cracked walls, the same line of tired faces waiting for food. He sat with them, ate from the same tray, and felt the truth sink in. This was where he came from, not the mansion. The next morning, he walked into the lawyer's office with a decision. I'm selling the Bennett house, he said flatly. Most of the money goes into a trust. Half for shelters and youth programs. Half for medical care for people who can't afford it. The lawyer blinked, adjusting his glasses. That's unconventional. Ethan leaned forward. Write it up. When he left the office, Linda was waiting in the hall. She searched his face, unsure. Well, she asked. It's done, he said. The house, the accounts, they'll do something real now. Something worth more than all their fancy dinners. Her eyes softened, filling with tears. I'm proud of you. He hesitated, then added quietly, doesn't mean I forgive him. Or you. Not yet. Linda nodded. I don't expect it. I only hope you'll let me stay close, even as a friend. They walked outside together. The sun was setting, painting the city in gold. For the first time, Ethan didn't feel weighed down by the past. The scars were still there, but so was the choice of what to do with them. He paused, looking at Linda. I've carried the name Rivers my whole life, but it's not mine. Bennett doesn't feel right either. She tilted her head. Then choose your own. Ethan smiled faintly. I already have. And as they walked into the evening, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Freedom. Not the kind stolen from him at birth. Not the kind promised by money, but the kind you make when you finally decide who you are. If you like the story, I would be very happy to have your support. Click the thumbs up. And to not miss new stories, subscribe and click on the bell. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and all the best.